So this session is about AI Taste Builder Playbook. We are at time and we'll get started to respect everyone's time. Welcome, folks. My name is Roli Seth and I work in the AI tech field. I love using some of the latest tools like Claude Code, Claude Design, and multidisciplinary creative workflows. I've been recently, for last 6 months, super passionate about the topic of what does AI trust means, what does AI taste means, where everyone has access to the latest tools. And I love empowering and figuring it out how some of the, like all the media and everyone who's talking about is the next generation tools like Claude Design. How is it actually practically usable or not? So I keep sharing about all these in my LinkedIn, in my blogs, YouTube. So feel free to follow even beyond this talk if you're interested in more on that. Today's talk will cover top three topics around, you might have heard about AI slop. So we'll understand how taste and AI slop correlate. What are some of the recent trending AI taste builder frameworks and some of the tips and tricks you can leverage in Claude Code, Claude Design, and other tools across that you're using in AI? Any quick question before we get started? Okay. So AI slop, if you guys have seen the word of 2025 top word in the dictionary was included called AI slop, which mainly mention that everyone which has access to a quick quality of creation, you can start having so many outputs that they all start looking same. And if you guys are interested in reading more about it, there is a subreddit called AI Slop, which has more than 220K followers. There are a lot of memes around it, but it just means that something that looks so obvious. So if you guys have seen nowadays, if you're using Claude Design, GitHub Copilot, any LLM tools, some of these outputs might look same, and that's what starts to become like an AI slop, that you don't put much effort, but the end user, when they're seeing it, they can quickly, within seconds, figure it out that you didn't to put much effort. You might have put up a lot of back-end tooling and system, but as soon as it look, not just the color shades, but some of these components and other pieces, it starts to look at that there's a lot less authenticity in the outputs. And these are again different things that are contributing to AI slop. So if question for 2025 was, can you produce more faster, which LLM said yes, we can do that. The current question is, can you trust whatever AI is generating? So that will be the main talk or topic on our thing about. This has been across very common. This word my friends and everyone in the tech industry keeps, or even in design industry uses AI looking like, which is just says like, hey, you don't need to explain is it AI or not, but you get a feeling if you're watching social media, scrolling different things. The point there is AI at this point is amplifier. It is an amplifier of good content. It is also an amplifier of bad contents. So it is up to us to define that just because you have some automation workflow happening, is it trustable or not, is where the question is coming. So that's where the AI design space system is adapting. And just for more context for people who are new to this word, there's a lot of public articles. I'll share this deck after words with you guys in the email that you guys can look and read through the some of the news articles. But they are talking about why is AI taste trending. So it's not just me talking about it, but Paul is the co-founder of Y Combinator. There are other people across who are talking about now at this moment taste is becoming a differentiator. People might, when I talk about AI taste or across, people generally think it's just about brand. Is it about color, themes, palette? No. The main purpose of this talk was also to tell that AI taste is beyond just the visual aspects of it. It could be also the authenticity, that the outputs that are listed, the URLs, the citations, or the data that is fetched, how much you can trust on those brand voices and the backend pieces also. Are the workflows right or not? So when if someone says to you about AI taste, it's much more than just the physical aspect of it. It's about trustability, credibility of the output. I'll pause here for a second in case there's a question. I'll look in the chat. No, not here. Okay. So go moving on to the definition. If folks, there's also people might say, is AI taste developed or is it just something inherent? The entire landscape of AI world is currently divided. So there is one set of folks like Ethan. He's very famous AI influencer and a professor. He's mentioning regularly that this is a recent paper from March, where according to him, we can train AI taste. And how do you train about AI taste is like if you have likes, comments, share citation, you can use those to create AI taste. But then there is other side of the world too who are saying it's somewhere the intuition piece of it that regularly adapts, because it also is a parameter of how much you are seeing the same content. So in that section of we covered AI slop, AI taste. What are the frameworks that industry in last 1 month? I'm not going much more beyond the last 1 month that are starting to trend. The most popular one currently is Vogue has been promoting this three-part framework on AI taste, or anti-slop, that they are calling it, anti-slop playbook. It's the first three parts are about aesthetics, which we talked about. It's just one piece of it. But the second piece of it, which I want to cover also, is expertise signal. When we talk about taste, does the output show that there is an expertise that is signaling or not? It's much more beyond the aesthetic. And the third piece is called IRL, which is in real life. There's the human touch. Can you add that angle? So this is just one. I'll go through few of them frameworks that I've seen across, and the one that I prefer in terms of daily building with Claude Code and Claude Design. So there's another one around which talks about cognitive load of how do you figure out what is AI taste, what to give to AI versus you do it. And the main thing they're trying to framework in their definition is anything that where the sense making is to be defined, judgment needs to be there. That's the pace where taste can bring in. Another third example is about they're calling this framework around trust loop for taste building, where you have to be very specific about the prompt that you are doing. You can't just give 5 words prompt and think of, hey, it would be most tasteful design. You have to be very specific about the prompt layer. Credibility is the trust layer, which I'll go in the next slide about how do you add and confirm some of the citation and other pieces. And the third, which is more important, is even if you give the best outputs and the best looking thing, are people paying attention or not? So those are some of the specific things. You can go into more details about this framework, which is they're talking about prompt layer, that your prompt layer should have 5 inputs. They're calling, this is an external company too, calling crisp framework: context, role, instruction, structure, and parameters, which is one part of the AI slop playbook. And the second part is human in the loop, which is much more than, as we covered, aesthetics, much more than just about expertise. This is about what is your loop around human verifiability. So those are some of the popular trending frameworks. People are now posting nowadays in last couple of weeks of what are the steps you can follow about going through this taste framework. But the one that I personally have been using and would love to recommend is this three-part framework called CIT: context layer, iteration layer, and trust layer, of how I use in things like Claude Code and Claude Design. So with context layer specifically, the questions which are changing, to be clear, like you might already be doing all these things if you're using Claude tool and any of the things, but questions are changing. When I talk about context layer, we'll go into the specifics of how it applies to the Claude Design. Where are your sources of inspiration coming from? If you are currently context layer of sources of inspiration of any taste input is coming from, say, LinkedIn or basic social media, it might not be developing the taste because those things are getting outdated quickly. Another one is what skills. By skills, I mean it's a tangible, like .md files you are building beyond brand and other pieces in your workflows. And the third piece is about what are the assets you are giving to these LLMs. Don't just rely fully on it because those have constraints. We'll go through in each of these questions examples in a minute. The second layer is iteration layer. Do you understand whichever model you're using, agnostic of GPT or Claude models, Opus models, what are their strengths and constraints? I'll show you some examples in a few minutes. Do you understand how you can customize some of the token layers in those? And one other interesting things that is changing recently in last few weeks itself is in iteration layer, no matter which tool you're using, can you switch? Do you have the flexibility to switch between tools? No one tool I've been using, all cutting edge tools from way Google Anti-Gravity to Google Stitch to Figma MCPs. But I would say not like don't rely fully on one tool to solve all your problems when it comes to taste. And that's why the system you have to be building in terms of iteration, you should be able to do back and forth. That will help you in token optimization too. And finally, the trust layer about how do you using multiple models to have back and forth. I see there's some chat. I'll pause for a minute and see if there are any questions. I'm curious, by taste, you mean non-slop? What is the point of it? Is there a slow repo? Yeah. So to first, Marty, question about repo. So there are a lot of repositories I have linked in the deck, which are very much trending in GitHub. So, and I have created my personal AI taste repos too. So happy to share that. Like in the deck, it's there. There are also sites of taste. So if you go to say getdesign.md, which is by Google, where you do is all you do is copy the prompt and you can copy paste. So there are a lot of, it's not just GitHub repos, but there are sites specifically built about taste. So that's Marty to your question. Naveen, on your question on is the my point on you of taste, is it a non-slop? Yes. So the point about taste is if everything you're creating is looking same, how do you stand out to have attention span of a user? So to your question, yes, by taste I mean non AI slop. But if there's a follow up question, yeah, happy to unmute and ask questions. Cool. Thank you guys. So let me continue with the specifics now. I'll go into how I've built my own personal Claude design and Claude code system with these pieces. I have inspiration boards that I'll go through in a minute. So beyond even GitHub repos, etc., Pinterest board, you guys might not feel, even if you might be engineers. I have Pinterest boards about like animation, interaction, and all those pieces where people used to think Pinterest is just for like some aesthetic of external words, but I have been using for trust and other things. So even those are good assets I'll share in a minute. Voice, token optimization. So we touched about briefly on this. Now coming to the specifics, first part of context layers. If you're using Claude Design, my first tip would be please, when you are thinking about everyone talks about in social media, let me create a design system. Please have design systems which are beyond brand color. And I'm repeating again and again because I've tested few examples I'll go through in a minute that if you're just giving brand color, etc., it is not giving the most authentic output, no matter which ones you're using. So how I've started doing that, the one thing I was mentioning about AI inspiration. So some of the links and the inspiration sites that I use actively are these. These are beyond the just the Pinterest boards, but among these also my top two, three sites. One is called motionsites.ai. The interesting thing about motionsites.ai is I can just copy the prompt, which is beyond brand as like colors and other pieces. It has interaction design. How do you even convert some of the skills that I've built for taste is if you have a video, how you can decipher and make it scrollable. There's something library called FFmpeg for all the techies in this group, but that's one like quick one if you want to get quickly the taste building. That's one popular site currently. Another popular, which is not full component but smaller tiny pieces of the AI inspiration happening, is 21st.dev. Highly recommend go there. The difference in this one is you can figure out some of the component wise tastes. You don't need to have a full repository of this is how good design looks like. It's like, hey, I'm looking for something like a cool taste chat interface. And all it does is you just copy the prompt from your surface to Claude Design or in Figma, Make, wherever which tool you're using. And that has been helping me some of these pieces too. So another interesting patterns that I've noticed, especially when it comes to inspiration, people are not looking for perfection outputs. When I talk about taste, people think, Naveen, to your question, that it doesn't mean it's perfection. I've done enough research even in last 1, 2 months. People are looking for imperfection because AI has become so much perfect. And by imperfection, this is an example. This is my blog post I like recently posted. You might have seen in social media, people are intentionally putting markers like pencil sketches, arrow diagrams in the outputs that they're sharing in those places. And that is not just by, hey, it's a personal preference, but that is actually a voice and a psychology principle that they're using to build taste. So I have literally prompts. That's one of these blog posts. If you go there, that how you can use in prompts. It's like, hey, when you're creating an image, have these kinds of highlight that will help build taste or trust even. So that's just a one tiny example for you guys. Another one recent trend has been, no matter which big tech companies or even startups, they are starting to use blurry motion graphics as if it's like a 1990s camera. You would have seen. So it's all across. OpenAI uses, Claude uses it. Check their social media blogs that all these big companies are using. And again, it's about taste. You might think, wow, it's blurry, it's 1990s feel. How is it building taste and trust? Because now AI can do full five fingers and everything, people want to have this kind of lo-fi and retro. I've even Pinterest boards about lo-fi. So this is my Pinterest board only. Or if you're looking to build trust, actually, it might change in next few weeks, but currently having some kind of motion blur aesthetics and those, this is just for front end, help brings the taste. So taste, some of the questions you guys were asking, can you share some of the links? These are the links. I'll share the deck also, but getdesign.md, design.md. There's Stitch, Google Stitch has docs. I have my personal repository on there. Some of the ones that I've started putting in beyond the basic ones that people are putting are around interaction design. How you can have motion controls, zoom in. Even one cute example I'll show, skim through, is this is another GitHub repo which is very viral currently on AI taste. It's by Lioxon. Just if you search about taste skill, GitHub, this will be the most popular one that will pop up on taste building. But one of the interesting one I was mentioning earlier was, it's not just aesthetic. I started interacting and figuring out with data. If you go to github.com/globe, apparently there is a cool looking data like globe, which you might look like for a normal eye, wow, it's just a basic animation and interaction design. But there's a lot of complexity of how data is being rendered in front. And just replicating that and getting Claude to replicate is a taste in itself, because it's the minimal UI, but the data and how do you enhance is interesting there. So that's first part of it. Getting some of the inspiration is building the context layer. Any questions on this piece before I move to the, let me check the questions. But everything gets copied. Yes, everything will get copied. And that's why in my last slides I've mentioned, if you guys have been reading all about Claude founders threads, he mentions if you have skills, your skills, by skills I mean those .md files, just throw away all your skills in 3 months. That was his comment in January, February this year. I feel like what that means is it's already outdated in 3 months. But I've been seeing now it's getting outdated within a month. So when everything gets copied, I would say that also means you have to keep refreshing. So no matter what design link I'm giving you, it might get copied, which is okay, but you have to keep iterating. And that's where you build the adaptive system is one of the final things I'll mention. Yeah, so Marty, yeah, pixel perfect is not required. I would say please refrain from going pixel perfect. So second layer with Claude Code design or just design framework, iteration layer. Remember I was talking earlier one of the question of, do you know your LLM strengths or weaknesses? And this is a good example. I'll give bad examples also. Did you guys know in Claude Code or Claude Design, you can, even without using any image generation framework or API calls, you can have these kinds of cool looking aesthetics and color shades. Just because we ask for default, it gives you blue, like purple or orange or those basic aesthetics. But if you know these gradients, even in typography, you can just bring in, or these are all created in Claude Code without any external library. And even not that, this, like you can have these kinds of, if you see this chart have been created in Claude itself, the left side, the amount of I've seen in terms of the gradient blurring in that Claude can generate. This is an SVG and the text, everything is just created in-house in Claude itself. I've seen it so seamless that, but people go to other tools of creating designs. The right side is just to show people might not know, because just because the common artifacts get published, things like storyboard, if you're trying to create some kind of, before even going to this like publishing or presentations or other thing, you can create pixel art animation, pixel art storyboards. I've been using it as part of my interaction and story flow designing, but people sometimes don't know what are their strengths because it only comes when you try, and not many people are currently publicly talking about it. So these are another good examples of just some screenshot I took and Claude was just able to seamlessly. These are some bad designs. Claude is not good in anything human ways. The left side is what I gave as an input of reference, like, hey, create something like this, and the right side is what Claude gave me as the best estimate after even iteration. This is another example, and how this inspiration was coming from. If anyone is into corporate sector, about some of the designs of SVGs with human faces. Claude is not good in it, but if you start putting and forcing it to use there, you'll get some bad quality like AI slop, like right looking. So that's one example of how do you need to know the strengths of any tool you're using, including Claude Design. This is an example of how Claude Design did not work for me, but Claude Code worked for me. So remember, I was telling earlier, github.com/globe, scroll to the bottom of that page. They actually show real time what GitHub repos are being put in which part of the word. That's the left part. And center, all this blurry. I created a taste skill using that with data, and that's in my GitHub repo, that you can have real-time interactions show up as part of 3.js library. So Claude Code was able to almost, I would say, 60 to 70% matches. Now the same taste skill I gave to Claude Design. And you might think, wow, Claude Design is more latest, coming in April. But if you see, it has its strengths too. I would definitely agree, it gave me more flexible options. But this is what I got as the first iteration. So in that terms, don't always assume that the latest tool is always the best tool. How did I go about? Then I have to give another round of iteration in the Claude Design on saying, hey, this is what the screenshot is, and this is how you then iterate. So that's why whatever tool you're using, you would have to iterate, but please don't rely on my point earlier on starting to have these kinds of back and forth in terms of iteration. And how I use currently is, even if I'm using Claude Design, I don't just stick to Claude Design, I quickly transfer to the Claude Code. Or even if you are not an engineer, please try to start using GitHub for sharing and editing pieces of it. That has been helping me a lot in terms of token saving. And other tools, then I iterate. Claude Design has this option, hand off to Claude Code. It might not be the most obvious button, but this is the best button if you're building taste and save tokens in parallel. These are some examples I've built in terms of just quick iteration of how I was able to convert with one iteration. But when I put in the first instant, if you look at the prompt on the left side that I gave, it's like create a model looking animated gradient blur. It did not generate. Second time I literally had to give the assets in Claude, and even this is the lovable one. So in that terms, be open to trying different tools. This is another example of how you can use Claude Design versus Claude Code. Left side, Claude Design is good in showing you UI wise what parameters you want to tweak. It's called up tweak settings after you get the first iteration. But I would prefer to save token, go to the Claude Code. There's something called planning mode. There it asks you the same set of questions. It's just that maybe the UI might look less interesting, but you're saving tokens and you can quickly get more answers through that piece of it. This is how I connect all these tools to GitHub and then have the seamless flow between GitHub to iterate on my taste. These are some outputs I created just with the inputs I gave about Pinterest, about GitHub, and from Claude Design, which created bad output, to suddenly within like Claude Code, I was able to iterate. Another one, when people try to do AI taste building, is also they have one asset. Claude Design promotes a lot. Hey, you can create web design, mobile design, presentation, social media. It's good, it can, but when it comes to multimodal design, sometimes you have to go out of the flow, create a different variant. So I literally went from a Pinterest board to Gemini. Again, when you say about, people might say, is AI taste about copying? I would say no. You have to build your own perspective, but you also need to understand what tool is right for when. So I literally went to then Kling AI, adapted it, animated it, and then tried to bring it back. So it's not always perfect finish. Another piece of when you're building trace is not always you might be doing in your own word. And that's where when people talk about it as copy paste, that's where when you start collaborating with people, have your Claude design set up in a way that you can collaborate and build something which a normal LLM could not. And some of this is an example of how I've been using Figma, which is beyond even some of the Claude design things I've been talking about. I start with Figma Make. But then I quickly move on to manual editing. Even Claude Design has this feature. You can do manual edit versus AI chat edits. I don't do my multiple iterations in Claude Design chat edits, but on directly interface just to save tokens. But also it gives me more control of what I want to iterate in terms of the taste building piece of it. So these are some screenshots of the good news is you can send back and forth. It has become much easier than it was, say, 2 months back. This is a screenshot for Figma. Once you have updated Figmas, you can submit in bulk. This is a screenshot showing bulk update to back to my Claude Code. So literally, I was working together with Figma and Claude Code to update some of these designs. So it has been interesting of how these are showing some other screenshots of iteration. Any questions on iteration before we move on to the chat piece? Okay, cool. Some more than taste trust one. This is very important because even if you'll make it, as people are saying, you might after point it to like, hey, I don't trust it. LLMs have nowadays something. This is a screenshot from Claude Design, which says verifying agent check completed. But I would say don't always believe what these LLM systems have your own verification system setup. And some of the ones that I use with Claude setups, even with Claude Code, GitHub Copilot, I use also actively. There are tools like Advisor. These are by default commands that come in, and GitHub Copilot has something called Agent Council, and Claude Code has something called Advisor/Advisor, where you can give the output of one. It doesn't need to be just visual to another model and say use critic to find the flaws in those. And so I don't always build my taste when it comes to one model. Apart from feeding my own perspective to build the taste, I also have it like I'll use LLM in interesting way of verifiability, but between models. You might think it's a overhead, but nowadays all these systems are coming by default. So that has been a recent trend also. If you look at just go to the Claude Code recent shipping, you will see how they are trying. Claude Code doesn't support ChatGPT models, but at least you can in advisor mode switch between different more intensity of the haiku model. But with agent council, you can switch between Opus model or GPT model. So that has been helping me a lot in terms of verifiability piece of it. So that's just one quick example on those. Another piece of when it comes to trust, please keep checking on some of the latest AI trust frameworks evolving. These are two quick screenshots from latest one. Google released a paper around agent traps. So if you're using any of these Claude Design, Claude Code systems, you might always say, hey, yes, 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 like always accepting some of the things because you might think LLM knows best. But that's what hackers are actually using. So there's something called human in the loop traps. Go and read this paper, AI agent traps. Well, literally they know because if LLM will give you jargon words, you might think it knows it well, but that's what hackers are using. Or if nowadays, this is another recent security week article, the right side security warning. If you get like a pop-up warning as you're doing LLMs, like, hey, allow it, that's a hacker new UI too. So please be cautious as you're building these trace, trusting that not always all the things LLM is saying it could be right because that's where hackers might be injecting new models. So keep an eye on these kinds of newses that you're building. The final point is about make the human visible about AI taste building. The point about if you even have been watching some of the social media on YouTube, Instagram, you might have seen that a lot of people have started putting their faces more just because people want authenticity of the faces and voice talking, not just in front of those podcasters, but even in normal news that becomes more viral and people appreciate it. So the same thing I would love for you to take as one final thing about make the humanness starting to come out in any Claude design that you're making it. So just to recap, this is the framework that I use: context layer, iteration layer, and trust layer for my Claude Code, Claude Designs, and GitHub Copilot systems. Any questions? I know we are just 1 minute there, but stop sharing. Yeah, Zoom is about to end, but our session is also about to end. So, as a next step, folks, thank you whoever joined. I'll send you the details. Go through the links. There were a lot of content, so don't get overwhelmed. Take one slide at a time. Take one link. just go and read about it. You'll get excited, I'm sure, because I've been excited. And if you have more questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to answer. Cool. Thank you guys. Have a great day ahead. And if you have more things you want to talk about, do let me know. See ya. Bye bye.